Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose firm, dare to make it known.
Hi, JA kids! My name is Martessa.
And my name is Kristen.
We are so excited you joined us today. Just like last week, we are learning the 12 steps for kids that could keep us from ever having to use alcohol or drugs.
Yes, and today we learn step 3. What does it say, Martessa?
I am deciding to let Jesus take charge of my life.
Why do we want Jesus to take charge of our life? What does that even mean?
Good questions, Kristen. And I think the best way to answer them is through a story.
Great idea! Ooh, what about Peter in the storm?
That is a good one. Shall we tell our JA friends?
Yes! Long ago, there lived a boy named Peter. He grew up by a lake called Galilee.
Peter was not afraid of the water. In fact, he loved to take his boat out onto the lake and feel the wind in his face. Every day on the lake was an adventure.
As he glided along the water, Peter often gazed out at the clear blue lake with a smile.
The water always looked so refreshing and sparkled in the sunlight. It made him happy.
Ever since Peter was young, he spent time catching fish on the lake with his brother Andrew. Fishing was their job, and it helped them earn money.
One day, after the brothers were all grown up, Peter and Andrew went out to fish like always. They threw out a net into the lake, hoping it would soon fill with fish.
Suddenly, they heard a voice calling from the shore. The man said,
"Follow me."
Peter and Andrew quickly returned to shore, dropped their nets, and followed the man.
Wait a minute. Why did they leave everything to follow that man? I thought Peter loved his job on the lake.
Peter and Andrew saw something special in him. And guess who he was?
Who?
Jesus! Jesus called Peter and Andrew to follow him, and they obeyed right away.
Wow, Jesus must be amazing, even convincing Peter to leave his job on the lake to follow him. What happened next?
Jesus, Peter, and Andrew walked along the shore and soon found more friends.
Yes, and now we are going to push the fast forward button and skip to our favorite part of the story. Ready?
Ah, yes, here we are. Scene 2. Jesus now had 12 young men following him, including Peter.
It had been a long day in large crowds, and now the sun was setting quickly. Jesus and his 12 followers were on the shore of Galilee.
You mean Peter's lake?
Something like that. Anyways, Jesus told his followers to get into the boat quickly and start toward the opposite shore.
So Peter and his new friends obeyed Jesus and hopped into the boat, but Jesus stayed on the shore to say goodnight to the crowds of people.
Meanwhile, Peter and his friends were getting worried. The sky grew darker and darker,
And the wind blew harder and harder.
and the boat tipped backward and forward.
Even Peter was scared.
Then suddenly, out of the darkness, they saw someone moving on the water.
It's a ghost!
They all screamed, shaking in fright.
Then they heard a familiar voice above the storm, speaking.
Be calm. It is me, Jesus. Don't be afraid.
Jesus was walking on the water! But Peter wasn't so sure.
If it really is you, Jesus, tell me to walk to you on the water.
Jesus did not hesitate at all. He told Peter, "Come."
Whoa! Do you think Peter let Jesus take charge of his life by walking on the water, even though the waves were scary?
I sure hope so. Let's see what Peter did next.
Peter looked at Jesus standing out on the water and felt his heart beating faster.
Right away, Peter flung himself out of the boat and walked to Jesus.
On the water! But then Peter saw the waves and felt the wind, and he got scared.
Peter stopped looking at Jesus, and right then, he started sinking. He cried out,
Jesus, save me!
and right away, Jesus pulled Peter out of the stormy lake.
At last, they both walked safely back to the boat.
Wow, that was an amazing story.
It sure was, and you kids can read this story in the Bible too if you turn to Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 32.
Your parents might even read it with you.
So, what was the lesson Peter learned?
Peter learned that when he let Jesus take charge of his life, he was safe and did not drown.
But when Peter looked at all the problems around him, he sank into the stormy waves.
That reminds me of what we are learning in step 3. Peter learned to let Jesus take charge of his life, and so can we.
Remember that step 3 says, I am deciding to let Jesus take charge of my life. Let's say it together. I am deciding to let Jesus take charge of my life.
Be sure to tune in next week at 8:50 to hear another great story.
And listen carefully to our closing music for today. It's a song that relates to step 3. And now, repeat after me. Be bold.
Be bold.
Be brave.
Be brave.
Be different.
Be different.
I
can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Tune in next time.
I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning